Mobile is on track to become the largest player in the digital ecosystem, and it's predicted to represent 70% of all media spending by 2018. A multi-device world gives consumers more touchpoints than ever before and offers marketers increasing opportunities to reach audiences as they research, browse, and purchase online. But the path to purchase is no longer linear, and instead mirrors a flight map as consumers move between devices and screens.
Ten years ago, there was no problem because most users were only using a single digitally connected device. Now we have tablets and smartphones and wearables and TVs all on top of the computers that we use every day. And for a marketer, that makes understanding the user's behavior very difficult.
So mobile provides this sort of dimensional view of a consumer and the ability to connect with them multiple times throughout their day. Whether it be television, whether it be display, whether it be visitation to a physical store, mobile provides this unifying mechanism for attribution. For marketers, that's an incredibly powerful new platform.
The biggest challenge that marketers face when it comes to this multi-screen journey is understanding and anticipating where the user is in their day and showing them the right message at the right time. In a study we recently did, 71% of consumers said they had a negative reaction if they got an inconsistent message across devices. And so marketers really need to focus on finding that user, understanding them across all of their devices, and making that message consistent.
You have to take into account the different devices people are using, or you'll have an incomplete picture. Users are seeing a stream of media. And to really understand performance, you have to determine how to fractionally allocate credit accurately across that stream of media.
So think about the ability to run a mobile campaign, target 8 million devices, each one in a contextually relevant, really meaningful way, and then be able to measure the effectiveness of that campaign, of that messaging, to drive those consumers to a particular store. If you understand mobile, you can now understand the consumer and their interactions across these different touch points.
If you're a marketer that's buying a lot of mobile activity, more than likely that conversion's not happening on the mobile device. So you're driving great influence in the purchase process, but the conversion's happening somewhere else. If you're using a last touch, last click model, and you're not taking into account cross-device influences, you're never going to be able to do mobile marketing well. If you're really looking at mobile as a channel that you want to use, you need to have a measurement platform that works with your media efforts to ensure that you understand the real credit that mobile's getting.
So let me introduce the panelists. Kind of the two companies that I don't think you could even talk about mobile without having them on the panel are Google and Facebook, right? So I think you have to have their point of view. So we've got Dwight here, who's in product at Facebook. So this is your opportunity to ask a product person at Facebook interesting questions. Okay, don't get that every day. On the other end of the panel, we have Paul, who's been with us before in the Attribution Revolution series. He's going to be buying drinks because he used to have a company called Odometry, and then Google bought it.
So you're actually buying the drinks.
So he's here from Google. Obviously, he's been thinking about attribution for a long time, but now inside Google, he gets to see how Google thinks about it. So again, you get to ask a Google insider about how they're thinking about mobile and what they're thinking. And then, of course, there's dedicated companies in the space, and we chose what we think are the two leading practitioners of this. On the one hand, we got Ed here from PlaceIQ. PlaceIQ has really chosen location as the nexus of the things that they build around. So, mobile can do lots of things. You can reach the right person at the right time, but when you add that location element to it, there's even more exciting things that you can do with it, and Ed's going to talk to us about that. And then we have Vivian from TapAd. We chose them because we integrated with them, so we kind of had to choose them. Vivian, I just found out, was, guess what employee at TapAd Vivian is? Guess. Someone? 1. Employee number 1. 2 founders, first employee, Vivian. So she's been there from the beginning, and surely has skeletons which she won't tell you on the panel, but if you buy a drink later, I'm sure she'll tell you what's really going on.
Many drinks, yes. Yes, we'll take many drinks.
we're going to start with some sort of general, just set the landscape kind of questions. I think it's really important to set the perspective before we start digging in deep. So don't get disappointed with the first ones. We will go deeper in a minute. Paul and Dwight, we're going to start with Google and Facebook to start off with. So,
just to really get us fighting.
Yeah, to get you fighting. There you go.
We're between you for a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. So, simple layup question: why is mobile important? Why should we care? Oh, either of you can start, and the other one can start. Dwight, you start.
So Facebook obviously is a mobile-first company right now. As intense as the music on this trailer was, I might say the numbers are maybe not aggressive enough. I would guess that we will hit 70% mobile share of spend on advertising in digital earlier than 2018. And if you look at time spent, that only makes sense. ComScore recently reported that Facebook has 35 minutes per day mobile, only 17 minutes per day on desktop. Google is similarly overrepresented on mobile in time spent. This is where the money is. This is where the top of funnel brand is starting to take effect in all of our best case studies. So it can't be overemphasized how important it is.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think a couple of other dimensions to that is, for a lot of segments of the audience, of the worldwide audience, mobile's really their only access to the web. So you're starting to see demographics that don't even access the web on a PC. The other thing too is mobile just really brings in a whole new constraint, or not constraint, a whole new way that people are interacting with the web. It's just, now you're bringing environment and location and some of the other things that you're doing that you just can't do on a desktop. And so that data and that where that person is and how advertising and mobile activity can work together is just something you don't get with desktop. So it's just really important.
All right, so one level lower, let's talk about what mobile's good at and bad at. Ed, I'm going to go to you first. First of all, what's mobile really good at? And then Paul, I'm going to ask you what it's bad at, because really it's easy to say the good things. It's more interesting to say the bad things.
I got the easy part. You take the hard part. So what's mobile good at? Mobile's a remote sensor, right? So mobile's this device we have with us all the time, and it's sending out a stream of data that's very usable by all of us in this room in a variety of ways. And it's really unique in that regard in terms of the type of data that it emits, if you will, and the type of data that it's available to us to process and get a better understanding of the consumer. So what's that good for in pragmatic sense? That's good for targeting. It's a great platform for targeting because it provides unique data around location, around context, around interests that you can't get from other platforms. And then it's also really good around attribution because it's able to allow you to do different types of attribution that you can't do on a desktop platform or other digital platforms, or for that matter, other non-digital platforms. And then finally, I'll plant the seed. It's a really great connector between both digital and real world, and we'll talk about that a little bit more.
The good and the bad.
So on the bad, I think maybe a year ago, on the bad side, you might say the ad format, but I actually don't think that's the case anymore. I actually think the ad format on mobile is better in some cases than it is on the desktop. But I think where mobile just is deficient is as a response vehicle. It's obvious that it's just not the greatest form factor, right? If I'm seeing a Progressive Insurance ad, it's pretty hard to do an auto insurance quote on my mobile device. I'm going to go to my PC to do that, where I've got a full functioning keyboard, a bigger screen where I can see everything. So I think in that sense, in the traditional sense, the conversion side is where it's limiting, although you're starting to see that change as well. I mean, look, you've got phones that are the size of tablets now, so I think some of those form factor things may go away. Right, exactly, just like that. But right now, I think you're seeing the fact that for certain types of conversions, more traditional conversions, the phone is not the greatest place to do that.
All right, so now we'll start digging a little bit deeper. So there's the sort of summary of the landscape. After each of these questions, I'm going to go out to you guys in the audience and ask you if you have any questions. So think about the question. Think if you have any questions about it. I hope you will have some questions. So first of all, let's talk about the difference between a cross-device strategy and a mobile strategy, right? So they are not the same thing. And I thought we haven't heard from you yet, Vivian. So why don't you talk to us about the difference between cross-device and a mobile strategy?
Yeah, so we obviously at TapAd think of them very differently. We say that if you don't have a cross-screen strategy, you just don't have a strategy at all, frankly, because mobile is not a strategy, right? Mobile is just a tactic on a line item, and you just say, okay, well, some guys right now in advertising say, I need to check off the box in mobile, and when they do that, what they're doing is saying, okay, well, I'm just going to buy a bunch of mobile impressions here that's not really tied to my online impressions and what's going on in my computer buy. And so at the end of the day, they're very siloed. But what we say at TapAd is, you have to be thinking about it from a consumer's perspective, right? So you're really trying to reach me as Vivian Chang, and you reach me as a consumer, not as me on my mobile device, me on my tablet, me on my computer. I think there's a recent study that showed actually that 40% of users actually confer 3 or more devices before making a purchase, right? Think about your own behavior, right? What was the last purchase you made, and like how many actual devices did you research that on? I actually just came back from a trip to the Oregon coast, and we basically were looking for amazing restaurants. I'm a big foodie, so I love to eat. And we were looking for restaurants, and we realized that, well, we're doing a bunch of research on our computers, but then we're on the road, and we had to like change these reservations. And what ended up happening is now I'm on my mobile device, on my tablet, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, I wish that I didn't have to start from scratch, right? Like nobody has any idea who I am. I don't have an experience that's really sort of seamless across those. Nobody's reaching me as a consumer. So at the end of the day, mobile is a very powerful channel and a very powerful tactic, but it has to be used in conjunction with all of the other parts of your buy.
Dwight, you want to add anything to that?
I'm going to totally chicken out and agree with everything you just said. The high level, we've actually just published a paper as well where you can advertise on just mobile, but you're shooting yourself in the foot. If you want to do true performance advertising, where you measure outcomes, where you track every single person that eventually ended up at a dealership or ended up actually buying a t-shirt, what we see is historically about 32% of conversions that are derived from mobile end up on desktop or tablet. So unless you're doing cross-device, you really are not seeing the full benefit of what you're paying for.
Okay, so we did an overview, we talked about the good and the bad, we talked a little bit about the difference between a mobile strategy and a cross-device strategy. Questions? Yes, over in the back over there. And 1 second, because I think we have a mic. Do we have a mic? Someone has a mic?
It might be impossible to get the mic over there.
Throw it exactly over everyone's head.
Yeah, you know what? It's Boston. He can speak up.
Go Red Sox. Gotta say who you are. Who are you? Where are you
Yeah, who are you? Your name?
Davidson, Digitas LBI.
Fantastic.
So we talked a little about performance marketing, and it's kind of clear, like when you're in the lower part of the purchase funnel, mobile has an incredible ability to kind of just take you right down that path. Do you guys see in the mobile sphere a place for mass brand advertising?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Or is that
Yes.
like, and I'd love to hear what your vision of mass brand advertising
And I'm
is.
going to let you pick who's going to answer.
I don't know, whoever thinks that they have the best answer.
No, they all think they have good answers.
Yeah, we're all going to jump
Okay,
on
I'm
that.
going to let Dwight, I'm going to let you start, and then you can all arm wrestle for seconds.
Quick study we did. So obviously Facebook, we've started out being primarily a DR, bottom of funnel company, and we've been moving up the stack. But one of the studies we were incredibly proud of is a major American automotive manufacturer. What we do is we do these very aspirational imagery and mobile, and obviously there's so many steps between seeing that Hyundai or Porsche or whatever and actually buying one. But then we link with the automotive manufacturer and check the actual sales in a test and control group, and we can show something like 10x return on ad
But
spend.
again, that's kind of
Yeah.
performance, right? You're
Yeah.
demonstrating. So I'm talking
Okay.
about like the real kind of sentiment where you're building a brand, you're building equity, you don't expect to pay off.
Yeah, so what we do there is we run polls later and we detect if you remember the ad, if your attitudinal change has occurred to that brand, and I don't know how you quantify the revenue based on that, but we can show extreme lift of your attitude toward the brand.
Yeah, and I'll jump
Ed
in.
won the arm wrestle. Nice job. Whoa.
That's because of that. No, so to echo the auto thing. So yeah, you can run a brand only campaign, and you can do some sort of brand lift survey at the end of it and measure attitudinal metrics. What mobile's great at doing, in addition to that, is measuring did you influence that person somewhere in that consideration funnel, right? And take auto for example, which is did they go visit your lodge? They're not buying; they're just visiting, right? And that's an indicator of an attitudinal metric that your activity, your branding to them, influenced them to take an action up the consideration funnel. And mobile is great at that.
And just to jump in, if you don't mind my taking
don't.
a third spot there, what we see is that many people think about, okay, well, I have one touch point and then I move to conversion after that, right? Exactly what you're saying, like what you don't want to do. And what we found is, we've been looking at user pathing, but not just user pathing from the sort of traditional sense, but also cross-screen. And so there are many touch points that consumers have with the brand that can last, 6 months, right, in the, let's say, auto consideration path. And we found that obviously, mobile has a big part in that. And I'm sure that Paul can talk to sort of all of his multi-touch fractional attribution sort of things. But it is, and we're seeing as well, it really plays a big part in affecting how that person is actually converting, what the likelihood is that they eventually might convert. But obviously branding is a big part of that at the top of the funnel.
So just to be Debbie Downer for just a second, so let's ask the opposite just to make sure we get to the bottom of that question. Anyone seen mobile brand advertising that doesn't work? Because you all just said overwhelmingly yes to everything. I mean, anyone? Is that it? It just works as well as everything else, or is it?
We don't take those campaigns.
I look at it as,
That is a
I
fair
look at
point.
it as
That is
different
fair.
creative, we see all sorts of things work and not work based on different advertisers, and I look at mobile as no different than that. Mobile works really well for certain advertisers. It doesn't work well for others. It depends on the product, depends on the creative, depends on the execution. I think that's the real answer. If you think about what attribution is trying to allocate credit accurately across the stream of media that users are seeing. And if mobile's part of that equation, you just want to measure that appropriately. That's what we're here. That's one of the big things that we're talking about. In that sense, it works really well in some cases and not so well in others.
So in other words, just the act of asking the question, does it do branding, is wrong because it is the same as everything else. It works.
Yeah,
it
it's
can
a
work well for
different
branding.
form
It can
factor.
well,
Right,
depending on whether your campaign is
The audience you're
appropriate.
targeting,
Right.
the
context
ad,
they're in.
yeah, the ad, everything. Right.
Well, certainly
Right.
there's nothing like a Super Bowl ad, right? There's no mobile equivalent of a Super Bowl ad, is there?
Anyone? That's a good
Well, a
question.
mobile Super Bowl ad is all about massive reach. So there isn't anything like that. We're not about massive reach. We're about targeted reach, hitting people, the right people at the right time. That's what digital's about.
He's talking about simultaneous massive reach.
Yeah,
right?
to play devil's advocate, if you use our reach and frequency product and you put it in the front page of Facebook's newsfeed, you'll get 10x the reach of the Super Bowl. So any given Tuesday, you want to do that.
There's a mindset.
Yeah,
There's a mindset
fair.
of the Super Bowl viewer.
Yeah,
where
discussion
you're
water
Yeah.
cooler.
Yeah, you're half drunk and you're like.
Hey, you don't know our
just
users,
like
man.
here.
That might be true.
All the time.
What about mindset? I mean, to me, the phone, and I know I'm sure there's some Facebook sort of counterpoint to this, but to me, there's when you're using your phone, you're very sort of, it's very lean forward, to use an old. Brutal.
But
But it's very sort of it's a utility, and you're like trying to do something.
Yeah.
You're trying to consider.
that's not true.
No, I would.
So
I
just
think
before he throws you under the bus, let's find out who you are and where you're from.
George Sargent, I work at Havas Media.
Great, thank you.
So I look at the phone as I think more and more people are using the phone when I'm waiting in line for 5 minutes to do something. I've got the things that I spin through. So there are definitely cases where I'm using my phone. I have an answer I need to get right now, but there's also times where I'm just trying to pass time. And I have it in my vehicle, and that's no different than how the desktop works too, to a certain extent. So I look at it as all of that is if an ad unit is being served in a mobile environment, you want to understand how that ad unit is actually increasing the opportunity for someone to convert, increasing the likelihood someone converts. That's what you ultimately want to measure.
And yeah, and just one more to play on both questions, which is, what if you could reach every business traveler? You're Expedia, you want to send a brand message to every business traveler who happens to be in an airport at any given time. Right? That's massive reach across all airports in North America, and you've created a target audience, and you've sent them a brand message in a contextually relevant environment, right? Where they're probably leaning back, waiting for a flight.
All right, so on to the next question, and let's talk a little bit, it's a little bit in the weeds, but is there a difference anymore between in-app and web? I mean, on the mobile phone, should we think about them separately or not? Traditionally we have, there's certainly technical problems. How do we all think about that? Dwight?
I feel like I've taken the first couple. You guys want?
I can feel that one.
Sure.
So I think we in the industry think very differently about in-app versus web. I've seen a lot of advertisers and a lot of people who are buying data who say, okay, well, I only want to target them while they're playing Angry Birds and while they're in-app. But if you think about it again from the consumer's perspective, you have no idea. My mother has no idea, frankly, right? That like this app is different from the other button that she pushed on her phone that was like the Safari browser, right? And so we need to think about them together, right? You need to be thinking about the user is not going to associate those two things differently, and so we shouldn't be either, right? We shouldn't be buying media separately or thinking about it as, oh, I only want to target IDFAs in this case. I only want to target like these Android cookies over here. And really bringing it together, I think, is important because we get very siloed in our sort of identifier technical speak, I think.
So it's a great segue into our next topic, which is, so that's nice, nice to say that apps and web is the same, but at Magnetic, I'm happy to tell you that we have difficulty with that. Thankfully, we're integrated with you, and so you can start to tell us about who's in-app and who's not. Mm-hmm. But how should everyone here think about that, the targeting, the probabilistic targeting versus the deterministic targeting that is available, and is one better than the other? Are they the same? How should we think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, probabilistic and deterministic, I don't know if everybody knows what that means here in the room, but just a quick overview. So probabilistic, when you're thinking about cross-screen, means that you're taking a lot of data points and inferring the relationships between two various devices. Whereas deterministic means that you're logged into Google or Facebook or something behind a password wall where they know that it is Vivian Chang and they know that, these two devices are linked together because of that. And so us at Tapad, the way that we run our models is we obviously use both a combination of probabilistic and deterministic data as compared to all the other the sort of Google and Facebooks that are sandwiched around me here. It's much less deterministic data than what these guys have. And so we have a lot of probabilistic data. And so what we're doing is we're taking in trillions of data points and trying to figure out what is the relationship between these two devices. Should I associate them together? Should I not? Right? Are they associated with the same person or not? And we found that our like combination of data, which is mostly probabilistic and some deterministic, is a sweet spot. Right? We've actually used the deterministic data that we have in order to validate our probabilistic models. Right? You always need a truth set at the end of the day to say, did this work? Did this not work? And when we run our models, our probabilistic models, against those deterministic models, we see accuracy of anywhere between 85 and 92%. Right? We got it right. When we said that we think that these two devices are associated together, we actually got it right based on the deterministic data that we have. So ultimately, I think there is a sweet spot between scale and accuracy that sits with sort of between probabilistic and deterministic. We obviously scale or like shift more on the probabilistic side of the house. But ultimately, we're all trying to drive towards scale, accuracy, and results for all of our clients, everybody together. So.
Yeah. So I mean, before we were acquired by Google, we worked with Tapad. That's how, and we were the first attribution company to leverage cross-device data to look at that. And Tapad's a great solution. But being part of Google, we get the advantage of being part of a company, and there's really only one other company, Facebook, that has massive scale around deterministic data. And so it's way more accurate. To be fair, the level of precision that we need for attribution is much higher than I think the precision that marketers need for targeting. Targeting, marketers can live with some inaccuracy in targeting. If you're 90% right or 80% right or 70% right, you can deal with that waste and know that you're still, in a majority of the case, really reaching users effectively across devices with your media. But from an attribution standpoint, to have 30% inaccuracy on who the users really are, that's a problem. And so being able to use deterministic data is a real advantage that we feel we have now that we're part of Google. It's a big advantage. It's a similar advantage that Facebook is pushing now by integrating that data into Atlas. And there, like I said, there's very few folks that can leverage that.
But in the next few weeks, be on the lookout for a PR announcement that's validated by a household name that is saying that our data is 85 to 92% accurate. There will be a more accurate percentage there, but
that's awesome.
But you said, okay, well, if it's 30% accurate versus 100% accurate, right?
30% inaccurate,
so,
to be clear.
Nonetheless, I think it is sufficiently accurate for results, right? At the end of the day, what do we care about? We care about results. We want it to scale, we want it to be accurate, and at the end of the day, you want it to work.
So I think we're in violent agreement. I think for targeting, I think you're right. I think we looked at from an analytics standpoint for attribution that we needed a higher level of precision. Or to be fair, we're getting a higher level of precision. If we were an independent company, we would still be very happy to work with you guys. It's just we have an opportunity to take the level of our precision even higher by using 100% deterministic data.
For anybody who buys Google inventory, right? So
No,
for
no,
anybody,
that's not true.
It's not across. It's not an open ecosystem at the end of the day.
We can take everyone's
right?
on Google, everyone's just like everyone's on Facebook. We have that device graph we're applying against all the media that we serve across a client.
That you serve, yes.
No.
So it's
No. An advertiser is buying media, we're tracking all of their media performance. We're able to take the Google device graph and apply it against all the media that a customer is buying, their entire marketing campaign. You're looking at it from a strict targeting standpoint, we're looking at it from an analytics standpoint. So the data is all driven from Google, we're overlaying that on top of an advertiser's complete media budget. So we're tracking against their entire campaign, whether they bought the media on Google or not.
So our stance on this is obviously, you guys have a walled garden and we have an open ecosystem, and that's different, obviously, right?
That's
and
right.
So,
we have a walled garden of incredibly valuable data, and we make it available to our clients for attribution across all of their media campaigns.
No, but
So before you actually start to get into fisticuffs,
it's a good thing he's sitting 2 seats away from me.
We're in violent agreement. I'm agreeing with her.
What about the people who don't have Google logged in?
You're right. So and just like TapAd doesn't have data on everyone,
not
right? So
that.
and it's actually important to emphasize that this is all about levels of increased accuracy. Even though we have deterministic data, it's not 100% accurate,
So
right?
what do you do for the people who don't have Google?
So we leverage the ratio of data where we have coverage, and we make sure we have enough of a match rate to be able to apply that and estimate what it does overall. It's no different than
probabilistic.
Probabilistic.
Yeah, no, it's
In
not
fact.
probabilistic. No, it's not.
So, but a way to think about that for all of you who actually have to execute campaigns, right? So, us in the real world, we're just like, all media buyers, we're media buyers too, we have to actually execute campaigns. Is you can definitely use the attribution product from Google to see how your campaign did.
Any campaign.
Any campaign.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. But if you want to figure out how to target a campaign, then you're probably going to need to go to someone like a TapAd.
I agree.
Or, but a competitor.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Don't go to a competitor.
So,
They're terrible.
Yeah, I'll say
but,
go to TapAd.
but that, that's the dividing line. Because you can target on Google for Google.
Or Facebook for Facebook.
Or Facebook for Facebook. I mean, absolutely. And there are some that would argue that Facebook data is actually better than Google's data in this respect. I mean, I'm sure one of them would.
I'm certain he would.
I mean, we don't want to brag.
Joy's an easygoing guy. So.
But either way. But if you want to target outside that, you kind of have to go to probabilistic.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah.
I'm saying for targeting, I think what TapAd's providing to the marketplace is awesome.
Yeah.
But I think for an analytics solution, what we're providing is better. And the only reason we're doing that is because we're owned by Google. If we weren't owned by Google, we'd gladly be working with TapAd because it'd be the best that we could do.
Interesting topic. Questions? No? You had a question before? You want to brave it?
I was actually going to ask a question. I mean, I know a lot of people.
Name, company.
Sorry, I'm Matthew Wall. I'm actually with Philips Electronics North America. So I'm a little bit different sitting in the room. I'm not an ad company. We have several of those, national as well as regional. And looking at a perspective as from a company, both consumer, distributor, B2B, B2C, and understanding what you guys are discussing, somewhat debating. I think it's interesting to see the different levels. But what is a way that you can work with both Google Analytics, you can both work with Facebook, you can kind of have a harmonious launch of having like a product launch, and you can actually have silos, but as well as having a good media branding at most. I mean,
So how do you orchestrate it all together? Anyone want to take that?
You'd have to share data, and that's the problem.
So elaborate on that a little bit, Ed.
So the data that they're using for attribution across devices or across screens and across media, there'd have to be a sharing of that data and then somebody to reconcile and measure that data in a uniform way, right? And that's the problem that we have, is that the value that both these guys at the end bring is massive scale and value of their data, and they're monetizing that value. So they're not likely to just sort of open it up and let it be available to you for free. So you end up going to vendors like TapAd or others who will do sampling. And in our particular place, there's one out there called Placed that does it for place visit rate across location-based vendors. And they're sampling. They're just taking a sample. We happen to be a deterministic observed data play, not at the scale that these guys are, but doing it. But our customers run into the exact same problems you're just articulating, which is how do I compare your results, whether they're some digital metric or real world metric or attributional metric across vendors, and that's really hard to do.
Isn't that why you guys bought Atlas?
I was about to go with that. This is not necessarily
that is
Give me 1 second.
All right.
So this is not necessarily company line, but if you're doing a search, you mentioned Google Analytics. It's probably one of the best analytics suites in the world. Optimizely is also good. Check them out. But they are. If you're doing primarily search, just because it's so tightly integrated with Google Analytics, just stick with Google Analytics the whole way. If you're doing more display, definitely stick with Atlas. Atlas has the benefit that it's getting all of the Facebook deterministic data where we know exactly who a person is, what they've liked previously, age, gender, geo, their travel history, everything. And it's also got a lot of some of the good, not as good as TapAd, but a lot of the good stochastic probabilistic stuff where we can determine age and gender based on previous behavior in Atlas third-party cookies. So in some ways you get the best of both worlds, and you can have multi-channel, every single ad you're going through directly through Atlas with this verification with cross-device and demographic data. So that might be the way I'd think about it if you're doing primarily display. Again, if search, just stick with Google Analytics.
And so the point I wanted to make earlier, which was cut short a little bit on, was around this open ecosystem versus a walled garden, right? And so I think that one of the main concerns that you're having is the issue that I have this data over here and I have that data over here. And that's exactly why we as TapAd think about this as we want to create a device graph that's across all of that. We don't want to only have these identifiers in this space when you're looking at your Facebook buy in this space over here, right? We want to help link all of those together and really say that, okay, well, we can help you understand how your product is working, right? And how, whether you're running media or you're not running media, maybe it's actually just site-side stuff as well, right? And so we've been taking a look at that stuff as well, not just in the ad targeting side of the house, but also how can we personalize content on a site, right? How can you use this data to really improve web analytics and really understand how people are going from your different sites on their different devices?
So again, another good segue to the topic we wanted to discuss, which is attribution. So we've already started delving into it, but how, and Ed, I'm actually going to start with you because I think you take an interesting take on attribution. And then Paul, you've done, a little bit about attribution. Yeah. Had to go with second best, but thanks for coming. So Ed, Place IQ's, what does mobile do differently for attribution?
Right. So what mobile's doing different, it goes back to what I started with, which is this device is a remote sensor and it's sending out this stream of data at all times. And in the case of Place IQ, is that we're looking at location. So in sort of an audience level sense, we're able to know where people have gone or where they are, right? And so attribution for us can be, did we change real world behavior? Did your advertising make this person do something in the real world? So it's not digital attribution, it's real world attribution. And that's, we think, is distinctly different and unique to one of the things we're bringing to attribution, is actually letting you know, did my campaign drive that person to an auto lot? Did it drive that person to a movie theater? Did it drive that person to a quick serve restaurant? Did it drive it to a financial institution? Did they visit in some period of days after I ran those campaigns? And then the other unique thing that mobile brings is it brings a unique ID. And we're talking about matching IDs. It also can help understand where a person lives, right? So we can look at, through the course of a day, where a device tends to end up at night and stay there at night and not leave until the morning, and we can infer that's a home, right? And now when we go to a third-party clearinghouse, we can either take device ID or home dwell, and we can combine that or connect that to other data sources. For example, Rentrack data in terms of what TV shows they watched, right? So now all of a sudden you're able to do attribution across channels because not only do you know that they saw the ad on mobile, that they visited the movie theater, but you also potentially know what TV ads they saw, right? Because you have the Rentrack data stream of what TV stations and shows they watched at home, right? Again, all anonymized, all PII removed, but it takes attribution to a new sort of multi-screen, multi-channel level, all based on this notion of physical world attribution.
And how have you guys dealt with inaccurate lat-long data?
We could have a whole panel. That should be our next panel.
No. No one will show up. Just for the record.
It's very geeky, it is, yeah.
Brutal.
So in fact, we call the product.
They say that like 70% of lat-long data.
It is, yeah, it's crazy. And what's even scarier in location-based is that it's not just fraud, but it's inaccurate, right? So it can be up to 70, we see over 1 billion impressions over 100 million devices each month. And across both fraud and inaccurate data, we have a pipeline data science process that removes anywhere from 50 to 70% of those impressions, just throws them out, and just says either that's a bad app that's spoofing. You can see by saying, oh, this app just showed up in California, and 3 hours later it was in New York, right? And all of a sudden you just throw that ID out, right? And that's fraud. And then their inaccuracy tends to show up in patterns, where they're either just doing zip code matching or they're doing geofencing or things like that. And we can see those patterns as well and just throw them out.
And I would, just to back that up, we did a whole panel on this on fraud in RTB, and the thing that, the biggest takeaway I've taken from that is that if you study something long enough, you can get really good at figuring out who's fooling. I mean, the computers do not behave the same way as people. And so if you're looking at it, you can get rid of it. The secret is to find an expert who is actually looking at it, right? Because if you don't have the expert, then it's not obvious. But it is obvious to the person who looks at it all the time. So attribution and mobile.
Yeah, so I guess take a step back. I mean, attribution is a really overused term. It's strange for a person that runs an attribution company to say that. But if you think about what the definition of attribution is, just attributing credit to media events. And so we've been doing attribution since we've been marketing. And in the digital space, we've been doing all sorts of attribution where we look at a proxy for a user, what's been a cookie, and we apply 100% of the credit to the last event or the last click that person had. And so I think what's changed and what's helped us kind of deliver better results for marketers, help them improve their marketing campaigns, is getting more accurate on what's really driving response. So being able to look at the stream of media that users are seeing, and now with cross-device data, really tie those devices together, so we're not using a cookie as a proxy for an individual, but we're using a device graph where we know someone's iOS ID, Android ID, cookies, numerous cookies, because they're deleting cookies, and tie all those to the same user. So when we get all these different media events, we can tie it all together and say this user saw this stream of media, and then through a lot of our algorithms very accurately allocate that fractional credit across those media elements that matter. That's, in my sense, that's what's changed and made attribution so powerful for advertisers. What's really been interesting is the pace of how fast that's moved over the last couple of years. So 2-3 years ago, fractional attribution was a search and display game. That's what we were brought in to do. Help me understand how display and search work together. Now it's any and every digital channel, and we've expanded that to obviously bringing in mobile and everything we're talking about in this panel. Huge leap of added insights that you get. But we're crossing the chasm and blurring the lines between online and offline data. So we work with LiveRamp and Datalogix to be able to map any data set that's mapped to an address to map it to our cookie. So that allows us, I always like bringing up the case study of Michaels, the retailer. This is a pretty young audience. I don't know if anyone has kids here in this audience, but if you have young kids and you're doing school projects here at Michaels all the time, more SKUs per square foot of any freaking store in the country. Up until 2 months ago, they didn't even have an e-commerce site. But their goal is to drive young families with kids into their stores. And traditional media efforts like direct mail just wasn't working for them. So they knew they had to invest in digital. They do a really good job of tracking every in-store purchaser to a mailing address. So we're able to map that data to our cookie and show them for the first time how their digital media at a user level was driving people into the store, even though those folks never went to their website. And that's using user level attribution and data, and just an example of how we're extending this concept. We've even gone further now that we're part of Google, and we're leveraging search query data to understand very granular insights on how TV is performing. 79% of people are watching TV while they're also on a second screen. And that search query insight is an incredibly powerful signal on how well your TV advertising is working. And we're able to look at it at an incredibly granular level and map that into digital performance to give that complete picture. And so that's what's really exciting for me as a marketer, as an analytics person, is just the breadth of things that we're able to cover now and the increasing accuracy you're getting. That's what attribution really is.
Questions? That's awesome, by the way. Questions?
Thanks. Been working on that for a while.
Yeah.
Google bought it.
No questions after that? That was too good. Yes.
So do you guys
Name.
Right here.
from Digitas LBI. So it feels like, though, with all these different devices and all this different attribution, are the customer journeys changing?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so I would love your opinion as to how does the purchase funnel change? Where are you seeing mobile play? Where are you seeing, is there a specific place anymore, or is it all over the place?
I'd say the general trends, and this is kind of stealing my thunder for the last question, but I'll mention it now, and I don't have to do it at the end. But so if you just look at what's happened in digital, right, the amount of digital spend, the streams of media people are seeing in digital is way bigger than it was even a few years ago. So it's more. The streams of media are longer and there's more of it. That's one thing you see. And then the cross-device influence. And so all of that's just making the current way or the old way of using last event or last click is just making it more and more inaccurate because there's so much more media that people are seeing that's driving their activity. And obviously everything we've talked about before about the cross-device influence is a huge change in what's happening.
Yeah, and I would throw in to that there's two ways we help people do that today. We have a product called Pre-Visit, which allows you to target with different creatives on different customer journeys in the real world before they arrive at the destination you're trying to get them at. So it's contextual creative, right? The second is the ability post-campaign to know these are the people that we did convert. They did show up at this store, this restaurant, they dined there. Now I'm going to start marrying that data with where are the places they visited before. What are the other TV shows they saw? What kind of products do they buy? And that's this notion of consumer insights, which then allows you post-campaign to further segment your audience. And so the next time you go to target them, you can say, I'm going to create not just housewives, but I'm going to create 3 classes of housewives based on the analytics I saw from the past campaign, and I'm going to target them uniquely.
Would you use different messages in different channels?
Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Yeah, and one of the interesting sort of real-life examples that we've seen of this is that it's no longer really a very linear path, right? Because if you even think about your own behavior and how often you switch screens, you're seeing a tablet ad, and then you're going back to mobile, you're on the go, and then you come back to the tablet, right? And so we've seen a lot of sort of this pathing where you really have to be thinking about, like, one, where is the user? What are they doing? All the contextual stuff that you were just talking about. But also, like, you don't think about it as a funnel really anymore, really. It's like every single point is equal instead of every single point being like, okay, I'm trying to drive them to the next step, right? So I think that's one of the big differences as well.
Yeah, you made that point before, and I want to do it a third time because I think it's so important. And for those of you in the agents, you should all tell your clients, and for those of you that are clients, you should really focus on it. We need to have the same experience on every device. It's just unbelievably important. I personally had the experience of putting something in a shopping cart on my computer and then it's not in the shopping cart on my phone. Like, the hell with that. I didn't have time and now I have time and now I have to start the whole process again. You do that, you piss.
On a worse form, right? Trying to add it back on your mobile phone is harder.
Much harder.
Right.
Right? And I'm on the phone because I didn't have time on the desktop. So that's unbelievably important. People, and as I said, you made it twice, I'm making it the third time. People really want to have one uniform experience.
Yeah.
We had a question in the corner over there.
Jeff Cavallo from Hill Holiday. Just curious if you guys could talk a little bit more about how we can justify an investment or additional investment in mobile to use some of the rich data you guys are talking about. If we anticipate for a client that the end conversion is going to happen elsewhere, whether on desktop or in store, where we don't anticipate a mobile conversion.
So Dwight, I'm going to give you that question, and I'm going to combine it with another question that we got offline. All right. Okay. So I want you to. This is a tough one. 2 questions in one, right? So that
the answer
question.
Is I am single.
The question. The question is, How will agencies and advertisers be able to leverage the recently relaunched Atlas and work this into existing attribution platforms and optimization processes, which is very related to that question?
Fantastic. I'm going to take those in two slightly different answers. The very first one is, once you've got your cross-device in play, you really do see that despite the advertising being on mobile and the conversion taking place somewhere else, causally, it's driving about the same amount of revenue, and it really is where the people are. If you want to advertise to people where they are digitally, you have to get a mobile strategy. So that's the quick answer. Is it drives the same amount of revenue, it's just converting elsewhere. For Atlas, obviously this was a softball, but we're tremendously excited about it. The real reason is Atlas is where you can get, the moment we added identity to Atlas, it's obviously this third-party trusted source that can measure both Google and Facebook and every other channel at once. But the moment we added true identity to it, this deterministic identity that we've discussed, we were able to immediately show that you have 30% less reach. There's less people that you're reaching than you think because they're on different devices, but you're getting 20% more conversions than you thought you were because we can actually show that the person saw the ad, was influenced to buy it on another device. We can also immediately show exactly what reach, gender, age, interest demographics you're getting, and generally pretty accurate location because our SI team immediately flags anyone that's logging in from somewhere that isn't their usual home. So you're getting some of the very best accuracy in the world. You're getting some of the cooler toys we have, like we can automatically do a holdout test where we can create a control group of exactly the same demographics of individuals and a treatment group and measure. You can immediately link your offline sales, your at-receipt register sales, your in-lot visits. You can link it to pixels anywhere on the internet, whether third party or not, and see true lift for anything. So we do believe that this is the future of measurement, and we want to make sure that there is a third party that can measure us on the same apples-to-apples comparison as our frankly larger competitor in the advertising space. So this is our major play to make the best measurement solution out there.
Can I just add to that? So I know you mentioned that there was an increase in a 20% increase, right, in the number of conversions you saw. I would say I know you were looking for some hard facts, and we've seen some as well. And what I would say is it varies very much by the type of conversion that you're looking at, right? So I don't know exactly what type of conversion you were looking at was, but on a sort of major financial services campaign that we ran, what we saw is it's very, very difficult, nearly impossible to actually track or to actually sign up for an account, right? Like any sort of bank account, brokerage account on your mobile device. And so what we were looking at then at that point was, okay, well, how many conversions are happening on the same device versus how many are happening on a different device, and really getting to the point of how much impact does mobile have, right? And how much impact does mobile and tablet ad exposure have to a computer conversion. And what we saw is that there were 4 times more conversions, 4 times, right? Not 20% more, but actually 4 times when you're looking at such a difficult conversion to have, of conversions that happen because of the cross-device exposure that you're having, which means that you're missing out on 75% of those conversions because you think those are organic otherwise. Right? So that's just another data point for you on a different type of conversion event. Yeah.
Okay, so 5 minutes. I can't believe we've been up here for 55 minutes. This happens all the time. I have just 2 questions. So first of all, I'm going to give you one more chance to ask questions. I'm going to ask another question, then you'll have one additional chance to ask questions. And then we're going to end with a brief word from each of the panelists. And then if you still have questions, we'll be at the bar. So any more questions before?
I actually have a question.
Yes, please.
So
name.
Yeah. Holiday. So people are constantly changing this 2-year thing for mobile devices, and particularly phones and tablets. People are changing. How do you guys actually make sure that the household, whether identity with the device, actually is correct, like over a long period of time? Like, what is the mechanism do you use to make sure that you actually have?
You asking statistical
yeah,
or
they're different
answers.
answers.
We have a really easy way. You log in, and if you want to use Facebook, which apparently 1 billion and some change people do every day, then we know who you are.
Right.
And what we look at is, you might not log into Facebook the second that you have gotten that device, but you're probably going to hook it up to a Wi-Fi. You're probably going to start browsing. You're probably going to start downloading apps, right? And so the second you even turn on that device and you start interacting with us, that's when we start to collect that data. You don't have to log into any of those sources.
And I'll just add to that. One way to think about that is not to think about, oh, they're changing a device, but think of it of adding a device, right? So devices are added all the time. You have your desktop, you have your laptop, you have your iPad or whatever other tablet you got, and then you add another device. It's pretty easy for all of these people just to add another device. And it's not like the other device then goes to somewhere else. It goes generally out.
Right.
So it's not, adding a device is a very, very quick and easy thing to do.
I know that's a lot of questions.
We've got our fifth panelist over here.
Nice,
George.
right?
Checks in the mail. It's all good.
I only need one of these.
Sorry?
To me, I'm like, I only need one.
You only need one of.
I know you could argue that you could need multiple for targeting. You have a place
No,
specialist. To me, I'm like, I only need one cross-device backbone.
Yeah, I look at it as that, part of the appeal of signing up with Google is if you look at the assets that Google has available. So they have the predominant ad server, they have a predominant DSP, they've launched a DMP that's in beta right now. They have the best attribution solution, I feel.
Bias.
They have the best web analytics platform, and if you look at all those components and stitching all those components together, they've got one of the best deterministic data sources tying cross-device data together. So I think what Atlas did with Facebook data is brilliant. It's awesome. I can't publicly say that Google's going to do it, but of course Google's going to do it. And so it's going to be strung in across all of that platform and tying all that. Double-click search, the bid management platform search.
Yeah.
I think the LumaScape. Look, I can talk all day long about the LumaScape. The LumaScape is built to drive investment banking transactions to Terry Kawaja. Yeah.
I'm just saying, do you start to see consolidation in the space because there's...
It is consolidating. It has consolidated.
Yeah.
It is.
You're gonna want. I think you're gonna want options at the end of the day. At the end of the day, right? Like you're not gonna want to buy every single ad impression that you have on just Facebook or just Google, right? And so you're gonna want to be able to target and track and use all the different publishers that you want to be using, all the various inventory sources, and be able to track that cross-device.
But
The sort of argument that we're making and the sort of thesis that we have at TapAd is that we want that to be open for you. We want you to use whatever technologies you want to use, and then be able to track across them at the end of the day.
I think consolidation is happening in the industry. Marketers do not want to have 15 different walled garden solutions they use to their marketing activities. That's why we agreed to be acquired, because I didn't want to be one of those 15 walled garden solutions. So you can buy every piece of media you'd ever want to buy for all intents and most intents and purposes through the Google stack. I can buy any display ad through DCM. I can buy all sorts of biddable media through DBM. Double-click bid manager. I can buy all the search I want through double-click search. I have an attribution solution that ties it all together, a web analytics platform that ties it all together. And yes, there's some other stuff that flows out, but that's the vision.
But innovation will.
You will. You will through double-click search.
You'll always have innovation happening at the edges.
Everyone but Magnetic.
Agreed. And Google can buy it.
Google and Magnetic together.
I totally agree.
Yeah, you're always going to have innovation at the
Google
edges,
and
though, right?
Facebook.
So yeah, there will always be the behemoths, and you and I were both at the same company, and you weren't there when I went through the damn process when we IPO'd, and every goddamn investment banker said, "Why isn't Google just going to do this?" Right? They all say that, right? And my answer to that is they will someday, but they're not right now. Right, and we're going to continue to innovate and do new things. That yes, they will continue to assimilate, right, and take on more and more and become more of a Death Star, to use the metaphor. But you're new.
The Borg. I prefer the Borg.
The Borg Collective.
All right,
yeah.
all right.
But you need innovation. You need small companies doing new, unique
Your
things.
grace, the more star systems that slip through your fingers.
Okay, this is getting out of control. So, I'm going to skip the second question I got because I'm just going straight to the last one. I'm going to let you guys out there have one more question before each of them are going to go through a little case study, and then we're going to hit the bar. So, one more question? No, going once, going twice, going...
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, as long as it's a question.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, I was just gonna get him drinks and ask how he knew so much later. But so I am curious how you guys feel, because I totally agree on the analytics. I would, dare I say it, I expect the weak point is Google does not have as good of a device graph as I think you do in some places.
I think Facebook's is better.
Google's is okay. Well, now that we've said that, I don't have to.
No more questions.
I do see the weakness being that Google has this amazing device graph, and then DoubleClick and some of the measurement suites are barred from that. and that there isn't a
They're
great
not.
reason
They won't
for iOS to be logged in on DoubleClick. So how do you address this where there isn't a Google app?
So the data is going to be part of the DoubleClick platform. It will. It's been being.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
It will soon.
Good to know.
All right, so that's a big news break, by the way.
I don't know if I'm supposed to
This
say
is
that.
not public.
You clearly weren't.
Not a public
Intimate little bar.
Yeah, do me a favor and don't tweet it, or he won't be able to come to
out the door.
All right, so we have one last thing which I want all the panelists to do, which is to go, and why don't I start with you, Dwight, and move to Paul, which is to go through a case study. So I thought it would be fun just for each of them to say, here's one thing that happened to me that, here's a mobile data point that changed, and there's one takeaway for the audience that you can learn from our experience.
Yeah.
Take it away, Dwight.
Great. So this ties together everything. It's a mobile travel advertiser. They were doing travel. They were not getting tremendously amazing results. And they were working with Atlas, and we said, hey, we've just started with Atlas. We're going to add in real identity. And that got it wasn't 4x, but in this case, it was a plus 50% result. And then we said, okay, well, great. Now let's layer in cross-device. And it was great because we were adding in bits of the Facebook stack at a time so we could separate out their effect, and that doubled it. So once you really add in true identity, once you add in cross-device, we were getting 3x the results and wild profitability for this customer that previously had not valued their mobile spend, had said, this isn't as good as desktop, why would I ever spend here? And then when you actually measured it correctly, it became one of their best, most profitable sources of advertising.
So I'm not going to use the same one I gave to you before, which is my original one, but I'll use a slightly different one, which is about what we call 1 + 1 = 3 at TapAd. And so the main hypothesis here is that exposure across multiple devices actually drives higher conversion rates, right? So we were working with a major financial company in this case, and what they wanted to understand is, well, if, back to sort of James's point earlier about, do you really have to coordinate messaging, right? Does it really matter at the end of the day? Or can I just spray and pray and hope that I hit a bunch of people, right, that maybe are on the same devices at the same time? And what we saw actually is when we are actually driving people who have been exposed on one device and then get exposed to another device. So let's say have one exposure on one platform versus 2 or more platforms, we saw a 200% increase in conversion rates, right? That's huge, and that means that you really need to be coordinating your buys across all the various platforms that you have, because consumers actually react to that a lot better.
Ed.
Major retailer, high-end department store, wanted to compare mobile activation to TV activation. So they wanted to know, does a mobile campaign drive more people to my stores versus a TV campaign? The unique thing we added in was we went to the TV network, and the TV network had 2 products, a premium product and a run of network product, which was different branded network, right? So they were comparing TV ads on the premium network and measuring through RenTrack and that home match I talked about earlier, consumers who saw that TV ad only on that network and measured their store visit rate. Then we measured it against normal TV, and then we measured it against mobile activation, right? And we're able to show lifts across all 3, that mobile activation drove more store visitations, around 400% more store visitations than traditional TV. But that premium TV channel, actually the increase was only about 250% over that. So that to the TV network showed premium TV is more valuable in a real metric than traditional TV, and that a digital activation campaign in mobile was more valuable in terms of driving store visitations.
Yeah, mine is more of a general thing that we've seen across clients. I touched on this before. We haven't seen anything like 200% lift when you bring in mobile data. It's actually more consistent with what Dwight mentioned, which is our clients on average are seeing about a 30 to 40% lift in conversions when they bring in cross-device data. And we're seeing obviously that the conversion paths lengthen. And so it just really reinforces that when you take a more comprehensive view, you capture more of the conversion activity and you're able to better understand what's driving that performance.
All right, so thank you very much for coming. I hope that what you got out of this is what we've got out of this, which is adding mobile is not about adding a new channel. It's vastly more complicated, and the opportunities to learn and to do new things are immense. And thank you, all of you panelists, for coming. I really appreciate it. Thank you for braving the weather. We have food and we have drinks. Hang out. And they're available for questions. Thank you.